get stuck on the meaning of words, where they came from, and why we use them. Like the word horny, although we know in the 20th century and also in the 21st, it means sexual arousal. But where did it come from? Even when you look at the word itself, break it down, it doesn't really emphasize of have to do with sex, except our modern concept of it. But even if you didn't understand English or its meaning what it is now, just looking at the word, and you know what a horn is, and thinking horny, well, someone who has a lot of horns, or they have, growing many horns or thorns out of them, maybe that's what it means. Well, back in the 1880s, around from the 1860s all the way to maybe the 1880s, 1890s, around there, basically in the Wild West. That's anything west of the Appalachians. You have all these weird slangs, and one of the slangs that came about, which was trouser horn, which actually means erect penis. That's what they called it. But when you look at the word horny, it goes back even further to all of the religious beliefs, from the Romans all the way to the Egyptians. The Romans, the Halatians, the Aegean Peninsula area, that's Hellas, Ionia, Thracia, Macedonians, they're all Greeks basically. And then you go to the Turks, the Arabic peoples before Islam, way before, when there were city-states like Babylon, and then you have the Phoenicians, the Minoans, also even the Jews. They had was an adoring kind of aspect, or a worshiping. Well, what they did was not worship. Well, what I'm saying is they adored or worshipped the bull. I don't mean like worship the bull as it's a god, but worship it like, adorn it, that it's beautiful, sacred type thing. And they used it for sacrifices. The sacrificing to, the gods or whatever, to their deities. But it's also been a symbol of fertility and strength and sexual power and provenance and stuff like that, because a lot of bulls are basically mounting the cows constantly. You can say that they try to mate like rabbits, as it were, as many mates as possible. That's probably where it came from, because also they had all these cultures had was an altar that had horns on it. Well, not all the cultures used it in the same way. Yes, they did have these giant altars that were for the cows that had horns on it, and they use it for sacrificing animals like a bull and whatever, depending on its size. They all did that. But there is some of the mystery cults that also had these type of altars with horns on them. But these mystery cults, not just using such ones for executing of animals, but also sexual practices, for basically to getting a higher level of ecstasy, to become one with the deities. That's what they believed, And then you can go back even to the mythologies. You have I believe they're called styrs, S-T-Y-R, styr. Apostrophe S, for English, that's how we pluralize it. these people had curly hair. Usually they're actually guys. They're like half man, half goat. Had horns on, goat horns. Why I'm saying maybe the word might have derived from them. Well, these guys were very perverted sexually. They went after nymphs. Nymphs are spirits, of the forest and thing of nature, and nymphs also house like plants and trees and things like that. And there's water nymphs too, that of lakes and rivers. These beings were known as sexual beings. They're basically always sexually aroused as well. And then there's dyers, which are women that are half deer, half female. The bottom half is a deer, full-size deer. The upper half is human female. It's kind of like a centaur, but half human, half deer. And they have, like horns or protrusions. Sometimes you see them with antlers. They're also, sexual beings. And then there's another type of, tree spirit that's similar to the nymphs, but they in-house trees mainly throughout Europe and stuff, of the mythology where it comes from. And these beings are also very perverse, as it were. Maybe it came from them too. But it's hard to say where words come from, because after its initial use, we understand where it comes from, and then over time, it changes, or we end up losing all meaning of the word, or we kept the meaning, but we forget the origin. And then here's some other things that I'm not sure it qualifies as the actual meaning where it came from. One, you could say, well, the person was on the horn, saying, well, a horn back in one day was, meant the telephone. Because before then, during the sailing period, you had was a horn, which was basically it was a cheerleading bellows, as it were. You just, it's speaking, tube, as it were. You just, you know what I'm talking about. You screamed and you pitched, you yelled across. That's how you talk. But, the phone, the first people that started using the phones were people that were hooking up and stuff. Besides, the party line, which originally it was everybody that was part of the network, as it were. All their phones were actually connected, and you figure out who's calling who is by how many dings. If you have, let's say your phone number was one ding, when it rang only one ding, you picked up and you said, hello, or originally it's supposed to be ahoy, ahoy. But still, that's also where you get the word call girl come from, because people called their girl to hook up. And honky, if you want to know, derived from white people that went to a black neighborhood. This is where it came from, in the South. White guy going into a black neighborhood honks his horn to get his black girlfriend or prostitute out the door, and usually she was underage. Now, that's why white people are called honkies. For black people call them honkies. But still, where do all these meaning of these words of ridiculous terms come from? Some of it will surprise you. And back to Horny being on the phone, because you're on the horn or whatever, like I said. Or it could also have meant, there is a type of disease where you produce little horns on your head. Others is like horns with thorns, and have calcium buildup in tissue and stuff like that. That kind of looks like horns all over you. Maybe that's where it derived from. There's also skeletal malfunctions, where you have distortions of your bone that produces horn-like structures, because it branches out and pierces out your skin, as it were, to create like so-called demonic horns or protrusions out through your body. Some it continues going until it goes out of your skin. Others, just these bumps, small horns or protrusions out across your skin, but it's your bone underneath pushing upwards. And those are weird and unusual malformations. You could say disease, but yeah, it's basically what it is, genetic faults. So tell me where you think that the word horny comes from, and if you have any other words